This is episode 1177.
Oftentimes when big buys small, the ability to integrate is important to realize the investment. And, I think SAP was very wise in retaining the leadership of SmartRecruiters for a long period of time to really embrace the behaviors needed to have a successful integration. We're quick, we're decisive, we're bold. These are all the things that these large enterprise companies need more of, an injection of culture into their company. And they would say to us, you keep being you. Don't let our bureaucracy slow you down. We want others to follow the example with which how you operate. So please speak your mind in these meetings. You're going to be met with resistance at times, and we are at times. You're also going to be met with, sounds like a good idea. Yeah, we should think about that differently. And we're seeing that time and again. We're 6 months in, and it's a mixture of progress and pain every day. And we're learning how to mutually navigate and work together, which is really, really the mission here.
It's not often a deal lands at the exact moment an industry is being rewritten. SmartRecruiters is being folded into SAP, just as AI begins to challenge the very foundations of SaaS. Raising a bigger question, are we watching the next evolution of enterprise software? Or are these the early signs of massive disruption? What does it mean to sell into that moment and then have to deliver inside of it? Inside this episode, we explore how finance leaders navigate that narrow window where integration must happen fast. Innovation can't slow down, and the assumptions that built the business may or may not any longer hold. Our talk with CFO Tom DiDesidero begins after this.
They say do what you love and the money will follow. My passion for making life beautiful led to a successful design firm, booming online sales, and a TV show. It also led to chaos, endless spreadsheets, and no single source of truth. We couldn't scale, so we chose NetSuite by Oracle. Now I get immediate visibility across the business, from revenue to customers and fulfillment. Clean, simple, beautiful. NetSuite is critical to the success of my business.
Hello, CFO Tom DiDesidero is with us. He spent his career helping companies scale, restructure, and ultimately reach pivotal outcomes, from guiding a Chapter 11 restructuring at the New York Racing Association to helping lead IPO journeys at Interim and Borderfree. More recently, he scaled Jor into a global B2B marketplace before stepping into SmartRecruiters, where he helped steer a rapid strategic shift that led, many say, to its acquisition by SAP. Today, his perspective on operational finance and decision-making inside complex organizations makes the story especially compelling. Tom, welcome.
Thank you, Jack. Pleasure to be with you.
So after that big warm-up, that's a lot of ground I covered in that paragraph, but we're going to ask you to look back. And I have to say, you began as a controller. I was looking back in time. I was curious where you came from. I was like, was it Wall Street? There he was. He was a controller who becomes rather strategic very quickly, it looks like. But tell us, can you go back in time for us and share with us some of those early experiences first?
Sure. Yeah. So we'll do the early journey part, kind of work our way to present. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I've I think a good storyline around that, and because it's a bit of a non-traditional path, I think, relative to most CFOs who started out maybe in public accounting or in banking, right?
Where were you way back when? Where'd you start?
Yeah, small software company in Philly.
Huh.
Graduated from Villanova. Yeah.
You and the Pope. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, was it always going to be finance, or were you just a business generalist, or what were you thinking from the start?
Yeah, I thought I would end up going down a law track, and I kind of fell into a love for growing businesses from the finance side and being able to work with the lawyers and such, right? So I was always deeply involved with them in deals and M&A. So I feel like I got the best of both worlds.
Did you take any accounting undergrad or what?
Yeah, I was accounting degree. Yeah.
Oh, you
Usually
got an
the
accounting degree.
very law
Okay.
school.
You got on the FP&A track eventually. What would you tell us?
Yeah, it was my second job, third job in where I was brought on with a company that had raised a bunch of money in the clinical trial space, promoting new drugs before they hit market. And they were both acquiring businesses as well as then putting controllers in to run the business and integrate. And in that job, you needed the accounting chops as well as the FP&A. They had a tremendous FP&A guy there that taught me the world of modeling and how it played into the business. Yeah.
A good mentor.
Many great mentors. I mean, I wouldn't be here without them. Yeah.
Looking back, we all learn from our mistakes. What's a decision early in your career you would have maybe handled differently today?
Yeah, I think understanding the toll that this lifestyle takes on not only yourself but on those that are around you, your family.
Is that long hours? What are you thinking of? Like nights you had to stay at the office, or what is it?
You know what? It's never being able to turn off. Global businesses, high growth businesses. So someone's always working. And then the hyper growth and high growth businesses you're always seeing issues pop up. It's literally 24/7. And even when you're technically off, your mind's still on it. And, that takes a toll on your relationships. I could tell you COVID saved my relationship with my kids, right? Being home, honest to God.
Thinking back now in those early years, again, you've got a lot of space between them now. I'm just wondering, was there a moment where you had to tell a hard truth to the others?
Sure.
And again, you have some interesting chapters. I want to also point out, I mentioned the New York Racing Association up front there during that restructuring. You were there. You were the controller. You were, in fact, you're like an interim CFO during that period.
I was.
Share with us what brought you there. And you were there 3.5 years nearly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my mentors at a job 2 prior took the CFO job there. And she called me and said, "Hey, Naira, I'm here now. I just got the CFO gig." She was the controller. And she said that we are going into bankruptcy. It's highly political. We may lose our jobs in a year. But we get to work with captains of industry on the board, the wealthiest people who have racehorses. And if we play it right, we're going to bring the first casino to New York. And we did all those things. Yeah.
You did. And what that was the Resorts World that landed in Queens.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember that bit of history myself here.
Yeah. You a racing fan?
Sometimes. Yeah. In that period of time, did you think you were headed to the CFO path, or did it happen years later? And again, the New York Racing Association allowed you to see that the possibilities there that you could become, a career CFO, I suppose.
That's where I knew I could do it. I was 32 at the time. And being in an interim role, you have the job, and all the good and bad that comes with it. And being I had come from tumultuous environments all the way up to that point, had seen a lot, and I was ready to take the helm. And continue to learn every day still. But I think the interesting roles that I had all throughout leading up to that prepared me for the ability to succeed in that role.
High pressure roles. Did they begin there? And I'm wondering, was there a mentor who helped shape you as far as how you lead in those high pressure situations? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I mentioned Irene, her name, I tell you her name, Irene Posio, but, one of the board members, was a guy named Jim Heffernan. And I watched him deliver basically a speech in a court setting when we were going through chapter 11. And his delivery really caught my attention. The way he spoke, how he emphasized certain things, the pace with which he spoke. And it was intentional. It was very slow. And I asked him about it afterwards because I would always go to Jim for advice and feedback. He loved teaching me things. He loved about this young guy asking questions. And he said, make them wait. And I said, what do you mean by that? He says, I know this topic better than anybody, but I need to speak in a way that they can understand. And I use the tempo, the slow tempo, and the words to visually confirm that they're understanding what I'm saying before I move on to the next. And I've used that kind of approach when I speak to groups or in public settings, because it's the same thing. I know the topic well. They don't. I need to let their mind catch up and process before I move on. He was a court lawyer, ultimately. Really interesting guy. I mean, his story, how he became who he was, is actually really interesting if you wanted to hear it.
Sure.
Yeah.
What set him apart?
Yeah. So he told me the story that when his first child was born, the baby had colic and was up all night.
Yeah.
He was a bankruptcy attorney, and he learned that bankruptcy attorneys do not have an understanding of tax law, and the two are very interconnected. So he studied tax law while he was up at night so that he could arm himself with both sides. And he became the guy between bankruptcy and tax law. He started his own investment bank, and he made super successful in that. And I thought that was a pretty interesting story because I've been through the baby being up at night and what goes on during those hours. Yeah.
You've also now presented to all different groups of people. You've been part of IPOs and you've been part of exits. There have been board members. There have been investors. There have been employees. How did your leadership style change relative to those types of groups that you found yourself communicating with?
I've always been someone who's very hands-on operational. And any business I get into initially, I dig into the weeds. I want to understand how it's made from the bottom up. I know the top down. I get that from the board and the management team. So I focus on bringing the two things together. Then I step out of the weeds and I can entrust people to do those jobs. But spending a little bit of time in the detail allows you, when you're only looking at financials or management reporting, to know that doesn't look right. Let me ask about that. So really understanding the business, not just in finance, how it works in other parts, especially in tech, understanding the relationships between R&D and product and how they tie together, how they're supposed to tie together, understanding the relationship between sales and marketing and how they're supposed to tie together. And having spent time over the years in these growth companies and learning what great looks like is also something that I take pride in. I think as a leadership style, you propose things that, hey, I've seen this work in other places. How do you think about it here? Why are we doing a certain go-to-market motion here? And oftentimes when you share where you've seen maybe something different, you find something, hey, let's do what we're doing now, but with a twist. Or let's throw out what we're doing. Tom, your idea is really good. We're just doing it this way because that's how we've always done it. And I think that maybe is where I go to, where the style sort of has evolved over the years, being, the new guy who's learning to now the old guy who's teaching.
A number of your chapters, you were VPs of finance, and then you step into a CFO role for the first time. Really, you've got the whole ball of wax at, is it Jor?
Sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that the opportunity? What did you see there? And again, you were there nearly 7 years.
Yeah. So I wasn't border free, and we did an IPO and sold to Pitney Bowes. And I stayed on at Pitney for 2 years. I was running global client operations for them. Ultimately, I wanted to get back into smaller tech and really get my first CFO gig. I wanted that. I was ready. And a former CFO of mine was on the board. And he said, Tom, I think I got something that you're going to find interesting. I says, what am I going to find interesting about it? He says, well, first of all, it's got hair, but it's got great potential, right? They're processing $4 billion worth of transactions a month. It was a year. I said, wow, $4 billion. And at the time, to give you a parallel, Amazon was processing about $40 billion. right? So 4 billion versus 40. And it's still a tremendous amount of activity.
Yep.
So that activity, it means engagement. But then I said, well, there were less than 5 million in revenue. So they hadn't figured out how to bring the engagement and monetize it into revenue. And that became, okay, I think I want to take a shot at this.
And again, you were also the COO before you leave Jure.
Right.
I'm just thinking,
Why?
It's sort of a chapter that you did everything you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
What is the next opportunity? Smart Recruiters gets on your radar. Can you tell us what was the potential here? And I think there was a new CEO,
Mm-hmm.
and I forget, had she joined before you arrived?
Yeah, I'll tell you that story. So, I left the Jure after about 7 years, and my former CEO at Border Free, Mike DeSimone, my first great CEO that I ever worked for, just amazing. I sent him a text around Thanksgiving, and I said, "Hey, Mike, just checking in. Hope you're doing well." And he said, "Your timing's amazing, Tom. My CFO just resigned. And what are you doing?" I said, "Oh, let's grab a coffee when you get a chance after the holiday." And Mike told me the story. He said, "Look, I just got here, but I don't think I'm staying. And I don't think it's a great fit, long story short. But I think that you could do some great things for this company. There's something here." And I said, "Okay, so let's come meet the team, and maybe let's do something fractional to do a little try and buy on both sides." And I said, "Sure." I met the team, and I met Rebecca Carr, who at the time was the longtime product leader at the business, and but clearly had chops beyond product. She was ready to be a CEO. And I remember I said that to her when I first met her. I said, "Sounds like you're ready to be CEO." No, I didn't know at the time. She was already talking about being the CEO. And it was one of those situations where she's the industry expert in HR tech. Like, everyone knows that. She's the go-to. She's the brain, has the great ideas, the innovator. But she was a first-time CEO and really had no experience with, the capital markets and really the M&A motion and getting a company ready for an exit. Whereas I had a lot of experience and none in the HR tech space. So you kind of take those strengths and weaknesses and you bring them together and you got a great thing. And so if you want to join me as the CEO, CFO, we'll approach the board. We're going to make a run at this. And I said, "I'd love to do this with you, Rebecca. I think we can do great things here."
So, okay, if we're to believe the headlines that we've been reading, 6 months ago, roughly, Smart Recruiters went from a fast-growing standalone platform to becoming part of SAP's global HR ecosystem, plugging AI-driven recruiting into one of the largest enterprise software footprints in the world. Mm-hmm. That's what the headlines scream. But how does it look? How does it look now to you?
Yeah, so this was a situation where we had competing products. And I've seen it before where we were actually, we were stealing a lot of their customers. It was a big part of our pipe. And this happened at another company as well. The play, in addition to being the best in breed, largest independent ATS company, applicant tracking system company, was also that we were really the first mover in the embedded AI product. No one was doing it. And we actually had the cash and the ability to go fast enough to be first and be successful at it. So we took Winston, which is our AI platform, to market, knowing it wasn't perfect. And we had a great relationship with our customers, and we explained, "Hey, we're going to offer up this initially." And we had good credibility with them. And we had beta customers, obviously, and then those turned into paying customers quickly. And I think when you look at the fact that we had the strongest independent ATS platform, that we were stealing their customers, in addition to we were really getting traction with AI and monetizing it, right? It's important. It's not just the theory, it's the execution. They saw that let's make a bid on these guys. We think this makes a lot of sense to combine our strengths. Right. And to the point you made, SAP is one of the largest enterprise players or nearly every vertical in the world.
We always love asking folks after these big deals to look back and tell us what mattered most when it came to getting the deal done? What ultimately mattered?
Yeah, I think that there's the platform and the product itself, but as we both know, oftentimes when big buys small, the ability to integrate is important to realize the investment. And I think SAP was very wise in retaining the leadership of SmartRecruiters for a long period of time to really embrace the behaviors needed to have a successful integration. We're quick, we're decisive, we're bold. These are all the things that these large enterprise companies need more of, an injection of culture into their company. And they would say to us, you keep being you. Don't let our bureaucracy slow you down. We want others to follow the example with which how you operate. So please speak your mind in these meetings. You're going to be met with resistance at times, and we are at times. You're also going to be met with, sounds like a good idea. Yeah, we should think about that differently. And we're seeing that time and again. I mean, we're 6 months in, and it's a mixture of progress and pain every day. And we're learning how to mutually navigate and work together, which is really, really the mission here. So that they realize the benefit and the investment, and our employees get the benefit from the growth into the next phase here. I mentioned, I think, in another situation where, the employees here were here on average 6 years, which is really rare for a tech company. And that was also a tell to me in that they believe in what they're building. They care about what they're building. That they have the stomach to weather through the change and the continued growth. And I was excited to be a part of that because I brought that energy and that enthusiasm and attitude into the business. They already had it, but I helped them look at it a different way and help them pivot to get ready for more growth and ultimately an exit.
You've been exposed to earlier acquisitions, of course, and what makes this one different to you? Share with us what's special and different about the challenge you're facing here.
I think that really from end to end, when I look at the different parts of this business, the different functions, I don't think I've ever seen a group of people so committed to what they're doing. We had to make some changes. Don't get me wrong. I did a restructuring in the first 6 months with Rebecca once we got here, really to set us up for who we have become. And also to make the optics of who we are look better to suitors, right? So when you combine all those things and you realize you could be part of one of the world's biggest companies, and they want to give you the autonomy to continue successful behaviors, that all to me is a recipe of this makes sense. And of course, the investors had to be on board with it, right? In terms of the exit criteria. But that's why I think we have a really good shot at continuing our success in a bigger environment.
How much of this acquisition, because we've heard it characterized as being AI driven, how much of the acquisition was really about AI?
It's important. But I think what it also represented, when I talk about the management team and the people here that want to continue to do great new things, I think that, as I mentioned, the energy and the attitude, goes beyond just the AI product of what we do. It's that these are people that want to push the envelope. We're going through a period of rapid change in tech, and you need people who can be adaptable, that are looking around bends, that are comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think that's what I would highlight in that regard.
Again, AI is today part of the mix in the business today. Can you just give us some examples of how AI is being used?
Yep. So there's obviously the commercial side of what we do, what we sell to our customers. Internally, I would say, for one, I'm going to be completely honest, we're a little behind on this in that, we restructured, we changed the product roadmap, we had a sale process and an integration. Now I'm just getting to the all in for AI motion that SAP calls it. about embedding AI practices within the functional areas. I think there are good general use cases and there are very specific ones. We've done work to identify areas of benefit. There are obvious ones around transactional and routine behaviors. I'm just now starting to get into how to utilize the analysis part and the FP&A part of our business. But there's far more white space, I'm sure, than I've identified and have actually had traction on. And it's a big goal for my team as an OKR this year, for each of us to adopt practices. We're going to be kicking off workshops, sharing ideas, and hopefully helping people overcome their natural sort of human resistance. Number one, to change, but number two, is this jeopardizing my job? Right. And so we're balancing that, I think, realistically and authentically approaching folks around, hey, here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. And let's get on this journey together. Like we've been doing. It's in the next part. It's the next part of the journey.
It's an interesting time, one would think, for your finance team. Is your finance team using AI already effectively in certain ways? What would you share with us?
Yeah, just around the FP&A and the ABB analytics part for now. But I have use cases around travel management. When you think about a tech business, 70% of your expenses are your people. So we have SmartRecruiters as a means to manage, that part of it in a way. It's the discretionary non-people costs where you have to make sure you have good controls and visibility to. So travel is one area where, we have to keep a close eye on things. And then we're thinking about embedding it in sort of parts of our payroll function. We pay people all over the world and it's complex. We have a mixture of EORs, the deal oysters of the world versus internal process, paid employees. Those are two kind of obvious areas. I think around some of the GL analysis that people, used to do manually with VLOOKUPs and whatnot. We're just starting to dabble into how we can connect that to NetSuite, or at least our NetSuite data, and utilize certain AI, capabilities with Claude. We use Claude and Gemini here. Maybe picking a path ultimately to go down one instead of managing two. I think a lot of us are trying to figure out, are we going to commit to one tool for at least the foreseeable future versus right now managing two?
Just the magnitude of this deal is certainly a milestone for your career path. I have to ask the question, what's next for Tom? We've seen companies acquired before and the CFO looks to discover a new opportunity. What's keeping you here? What's exciting you about sticking around a while?
Yeah, so I have a personal obligation to help SAP realize this investment. I feel that they want me to do that, and I personally have that obligation. I think when I think about the world beyond, I'm in my early 50s, so we're not ready for the beach just quite yet. I had an interesting conversation with the VC last week, and I think it's a good story to tell. He said that you were one of our porcos, and we use you as the shining star of what others should do. I said, I'll come back to that in a moment. So you have all these SaaS players in our portfolio, and we're all talking about the SaaS apocalypse, right? And what that means to be potentially disrupted by the AI players. And over here, you have the AI players who have the ability to basically replicate SmartRecruiters in a matter of months. But what they don't have are the customer relationships and the trust that you built over years. So they're kind of stuck until they figure that out. My portco SaaS companies who need to adopt your model, which was, we are going to figure out how to take our SaaS capabilities and add AI capabilities on top of that. It may displace some of the things that you're doing now. It may be purely incremental, but the point is you have to have something around AI that you can monetize to your customers. And I'm having to convince those SaaS companies that they have to do this. They're not going to get the valuations that they're looking for without it. And a lot of them are having a hard time getting their arms around this. This is where I think is going to happen is over the next year to two, you're going to have these SaaS players, you're going to have the AI guys, and we're going to have to figure out how to come together. Each one has what the other needs. So you're in a great spot. You're there for, for a couple of years or so to see through the integration and let the dust settle. And then once the dust settles, we're going to know who the potential winners are. And then maybe that's where it gets interesting.
You've lived through a number of sea changes, I suspect. We want you to look back again. We're wondering, and maybe this is a recent development, but this is when we ask for a finance strategic moment. We're wondering if you'd share with us a moment of strategic insight that you experienced along the way here. One that maybe allowed you to pursue an opportunity, avoid a risk, whatever it may have been. What comes to mind?
So I'll use the most recent example at SmartRecruiters. When I first got here, I took the first month or so to make an assessment of the business, talk to the leaders, understand what works, what doesn't. And having that baseline understanding of what is here and why was a good start. Then I layered in benchmarks. So your VCs have great benchmark insights in terms of this is the size company you are, revenue-wise, employee-wise. This is what best looks like. And here's where you are. In some parts, you're on the good end of the curve, and some parts you're not. And, what I said to the management team was, in order for us to realize the valuation and growth that we ultimately want, we have to get our benchmarks right. And they had never gone down that journey of understanding truly why benchmarks matter. And we worked our way across the business. And, we looked at one thing such as magic number, right? It's how much you spend in sales and marketing versus how much you grow. I look at net magic number because you take out the churn part of that too, right? So I think that's the best reflection of this business. And I said, our net magic number is nowhere near it needs to be. And I got to break it down to the company as to what are the elements that are within that are driving that number. And we talked about CAC and defining what that is. We talked about that we have really two different types of customers, but yet we tend to treat them the same. And by that, we have 80% of our business is truly enterprise, large companies, big dollars, big risk. And the other 20% was the mid-market, the much smaller, more nascent players. Nearly the same CAC, but the enterprise players are far more retentive, more adaptive to what you're selling, and stickier, because they integrate. Whereas your mid-market, high churn, still too high of a CAC. They don't integrate, and therefore they switch easily. And I said, you need to stop treating them as if they're the same. It's the 80% that really matters. So then it meant saying no to a lot of things in the roadmap that were really mid-market centric and focusing on the enterprise. And further, when you got into the magic number drivers, there were no great disciplines around marketing and demand generation spend. And it was something that I worked very quickly on in the first few months to get the data right so that we had a proper pipeline funnel from marketing, sales, channel leads that flow through the funnel. So you can understand how much it costs, what your conversion rates are. And these were all things that people were like, yeah, this is really good. Now we understand both the underlying pieces that are driving that number that you're saying is not good, Tom. And we took action on those different pieces to ultimately improve it in a way that it made sense. They got buy-in to it, and they knew why they were doing what I was asking them to do, why it actually mattered.
Is that a path you've taken in multiple times with organizations, or was there something much different about
this one worked the best. Both in that the people were receptive to it, and the company was at the scale where it could actually absorb it. I'd seen it done in other places to varying success where I was not the owner of it, but more of the passenger, whereas here I was a driver. And we all learn from our past, good and bad, right? And I think that that plays.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, that's great. Thank you for that. We want you to go back in time yet again. And here's what we're thinking. Again, the first time you got into a CFO role, there must have been something. You had observed CFO for years, but as you took on the role that first 60 days, if you go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
When I was at Jor, there were a couple things. I didn't put the time in that I should have initially to focus on the quality of data. And because of that, you were making decisions on questionable information. And I regret not getting into the data piece of it sooner. I did it immediately at SmartRecruiters. I think the second thing is, I did 8 rounds of debt and equity fundraising at Jor over 6 years. So when you think about it, I was constantly raising money going through the cycle, and it takes you out of the business. So it's not a 60-day kind of Q&A topic, but it was one of those where I'll never do that again. There's a mindset now that get enough money early such that you can build your platform or your product to achieve product market fit and stay in the business. You cannot be in a cycle where you're constantly raising money every year. It's just not. It just takes you out of the business, and you can't be the leader that you need to be.
Nice. Thank you for that. Hey, we always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side for us. What don't most people know about Tom DiDesidero?
I am a member of the Arthritis Foundation board. I believe that at a certain point in your life, you need to provide your time, talent, and treasure in different ways once you're able. And, that foundation serves really the most common form of disability in the country. There's even 300,000 kids that suffer from autoimmune diseases, one of which is my son. So I became part of that, and it's, one of the ways that I give back my time and talent to help do things that are not just monetary gain. Yeah, I love it. It's a big part of.
How is something like that how was something like that diagnosed? I mean, did you think your son was, I don't know, Lyme disease or something else until it finally gets identified?
We saw the symptoms when he was around 7, even before that, honestly. There's a lot of doctor's visits, and then ultimately someone makes the connection, and I'll never forget that day. Where he said, I think he needs to see the rheumatologist. And then the blood test bore out that's what it was.
Oh, okay.
And then you kick yourself, because why didn't we do these tests 5 years ago? Right.
Yeah.
But that's how it came to pass. And there's many, many children who suffer like that unknowingly because they don't get the diagnosis early.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonder if you have a book recommendation for us, and maybe it's a resource or just something that you might have influenced your thinking or something you've escaped with.
Yeah. So I grew up in Philly, and I was a Sixers fan in the 80s. Dr. J. Maybe people remember him, but the general manager was a guy named Pat Williams, and he wrote a book called Humility, the Secret Ingredient of Success. And I think there's a lot of takeaways there around how you see people who are successful yet humble, and others who aren't. And I much rather be around the people that can still maintain a good attitude and good ways of treating people, also being successful, and being confident in the absence of arrogance. That's a term that is dwelt on in the book. I think it's interesting.
Wonderful. Yeah, excellent. We always love getting a new selection. So that's Pat Williams. The book title again?
Humility, the secret ingredient of success.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. We are up to our final question. And thanks so much, Tom. I did ask quite a few extra questions along the way this time, so I apologize. But thank you. Our listeners appreciate it. Looking forward, what are your priorities for the coming 6 to 12 months? What do you got to get done here?
Yeah.
What's the priority?
On a personal level, there's personal, professional. On a personal level, the lifestyle we have being leaders in these hyper growth companies is very difficult. And, I've fortunately had an amazing wife with me throughout this journey from right out of school. I am really enjoying being able to spend more time with her and doing some of the things that we always put off. Eating better, getting more exercise. And, I'm very fortunate. I'm very fortunate. I know it. On a professional level, I think the key is to continue the relentless pursuit of behaviors that continue to create success. When you're in integration mode, you're now in a hyper matrixed environment in a much bigger company. And one of the things they said to us is, keep your outcome focused behaviors. Don't let process and bureaucracy get in the way of the progress. And when you think about that professionally and what it takes to integrate into a new environment, I think about it every day. I get blocked on things and I say, no, we can't let this happen. Right. And you try to find a common ground. Let me help understand where you're coming from. Okay. Let me show you where I'm coming from. And then just the people side of it. That's where I'm focused the next year for SAP.
Tom DiDesidero, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you. My pleasure, Jack.